great philosophical, existential truth that's being enunciated. It's more, I am the one who acts, or I am the one who causes things to act. Again, we're not 100% sure of the meaning, but it's more that way. It's certainly not the existential way that the Greeks think. I don't know if that makes any sense, but just to tell you that, because so much ink has been spilled on that. So, I think we'll leave it there. So we'll finish now, and I haven't looked here as much as I should have, you know, but that's okay. We'll just see how it goes. But what I'd love to do now is to finish by looking at this. Because if you look at this is chapter 3, there are in fact two sources that have been put together. And somewhere in the story, as you know, we've got J and E. J is the writer who's more ancient, from Jerusalem. E is the writer from the prophetic northern kingdom, 100 or so years later. So we're going to read the story, the J story. We're going to read the J story. We're going to leave out the underline, and you'll see it still makes sense. This is the original J story. Moses was looking after the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law. He led his flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. I'll come back to that. There the angel of Yahweh appeared to him in the shape of a flame of fire, coming from the middle of a bush. Moses looked. There was the bush blazing, but it was not being burnt up. I must go and look at this strange sight, Moses said, and see why the bush isn't burnt. Now Yahweh saw him go forward to look, and God called him from the middle of the bush. Come no nearer, he said. Take off your shoes, for the place on which you stand is holy ground. And Yahweh said, I have seen the miserable state of my people in Egypt. I have heard their appeal to be free of their slave drivers. Yes, I'm well aware of their sufferings. I mean to deliver them from out of the hands of the Egyptians and bring them up out of the land to a rich land and broad, a land where milk and honey flow, the home of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and tell them, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, has appeared to me, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he said to me, I have visited you and seen all that the Egyptians are doing, and so I've resolved to bring you out of Egypt, where you are oppressed, into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, etc., to a land where milk and honey flow. They will listen to your words, and with the elders of Israel you are to go to the king of Israel and say, etc. You can sort of read it, and it makes sense, because it's the story, the original story. If you looked at the other parts, it takes it slightly in another direction, and that's the E coming in. But the editor, somewhere along the line, has put them both together. I'd love to do that again and show you the actual crossing of the Sea of Reeds, because there's another figure, another whole theology coming into the priestly school, and you can see that one of them, the priestly school, that's the one that does have the walls, and the other, E or J, I forget which one, has the Egyptians actually sinking in mud. I won't go into that now, of course. That'll do. All right? Good people of God? Thanks. I'm busy. So any questions on that? Sorry, scusatemi. Is there any questions or would any comments or anything you'd like? I'm conscious it's just 9:30.
I have a quick question tonight about what was the time frame between Exodus and when Jesus came about?
Well, we think the Exodus is, if it's Ramesses II, that's the year 1250 BC. So it is 1,250 years, 1,250 years. And it seems to be back, certainly, 1,200 years BC.
When we speak of years as they are today.
Yes, they are today. Yes. Oh, yes. And we can see things happening around the same time. Certainly, by the year when King David is there, about 990, and King Solomon 960, 950, we've got contracts that they made with the Egyptians, and we've got stacks by then. Yes, there's a lot there. By the kingdom. Once you get to the kingdom, you've got a lot. Of course, once you get to the kingdom, that's when we start to write things down. Isn't it? They don't write it down before that. So that's when the first writing actually takes place. That's the J source. He's from the kingdom of Jerusalem. Yeah.
Well, what you've got here, this is not what we've got now, is it? This is, that's a little bit different here.
This translation, I just copied the Jerusalem Bible, but the translation will be different, slightly, but it'll be the same. It'll be translated from the Hebrew, so it would be...
So it's exactly the same as this one?
Yes, but the translation might be different.
Yeah, because what about the priestly part?
That's not in chapter 3.
Oh, it's not yet?
No. No.
Right.
It will be a bit later, but it's not there. The priests sort of edit it all again from another perspective, from the perspective of the exile, yes. So they add their own. Does it make sense to you how the book got here and what it's trying to do so far? And Moses' introduction, and now he's got his call and his mission, and then we'll see what happens after that. But
actually, one thing that can't in our book is Joseph. Joseph's already in Egypt. Is this the one? This is a different Joseph. It's not Mary's husband.
No, because that's right. Yes. And of course, that's a novella, a little novel. So again, you don't go too much into what actually happened. It's part of that little novella. Is part of getting the Jewish people into Egypt, because by that time, the Holy Land has a lot of famines and things, and there are probably more Jews living in Egypt. Well, now look, if we go to look at the book of Judges and the book of Joshua, it's not quite as clear that all the Jews, say 100,000 Jews came, killed everybody, and just took over. It's not quite as clear as that. There would have been some, they would have taken some territory. Then there were obviously alliances with other places and all that over a couple of 100 years. So it's a slower settlement that appears.
Was the Jewish prohibition against intermarriage with other races, is that still in place? They couldn't have mingled with some of those people?
No, that's a strict thing a bit later. It's not as strict at that time. You'd have to look at, and I would have to study that more, but my understanding of that group that comes back from Egypt is that it's a slower settlement. There is some conflict and some conquest, but it takes a couple of 100 years before...
They kind of infiltrated.
Yes, that's right. And there probably would have been some intermarriage and struggles with the Jewish people worshipping other gods and all that, there would have... A bit like the English infiltrating into perhaps southern Scotland, or that sort of. After a couple of they're speaking English and they've adopted a lot of English laws or whatever. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks again.